I'd like to thank you all for coming. We have with you on stage a lawyer, an art conservator, a fine art insurance broker, and an art advisor and curator. Each of us on stage in the various professions we represent provide different and important roles for collectors, artists, museums, galleries, foundations, corporate collections, among others. Today we would like to provide certain information on what you need to consider when starting and maintaining an art collection, when acquiring a piece of art, and when protecting a piece of art. Each of us are collectors as well, and we believe that we are the custodians of the artwork that we have in our possession. We are simply the ones taking care of the artwork for the future, as in most cases the art will outlast us, but it will not last forever. We hope that in this discussion will allow you to look at the art that you have in your possession or that you plan to acquire in a different way.
Hi, my name is Vaughn Sanborn. I'm a partner at the international law firm of Withers. I provide U.S. legal and art law advice for affluent American and international clients and single and multifamily offices. I advise clients on structuring their business, real estate, and personal investments, and counsel individuals and corporate fiduciaries on trust structures. In the area of art law, I assist clients with art insurance issues, the formation of trusts including structures to hold art assets, the use of tax-free exchanges for artwork, issues regarding sales and use tax, and the purchase and sale of art. I'm chairman of the Tom Gold Dance Foundation, as well as on the board of a foundation of a prominent living artist. To my right is Gloria Velandia Ludmer. Gloria is an art conservator with almost 30 years of experience in private practice. She established her own firm in 1989 in Miami, where she became involved with important Latin American and contemporary collections in the United States. Along with Sam Keller, Gloria created the Art Basel Conservation Department, and since 2002 has served as a preferred conservator of Art Basel Miami Beach. She's also a guest lecturer at venues such as Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, Appraiser Association of America, art fairs worldwide, and an advisor for numerous renowned contemporary artists and collectors. Colombian-born and a former French resident with a conservation practice in Paris, Gloria is able to converse with clients in English, Spanish, and French. She earned her master's in conservation and science and bachelor in fine arts from the School of San Fernando, Spain. She studied chemistry, which I found odd, at the University of Pennsylvania and holds a master's in chemistry for conservation from Tufts University. To Gloria's right is Graciela Ibanez. Graciela received her undergraduate degree as well as her master's degree in art history from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She began her work in the museum field at the Carrillo Gil Art Museum, where she served as a curator. Within the private sector, she was a director of the Niña Menacal Gallery in Mexico City. From 2010 through 2014, Graciela was part of the curatorial team of Mexico's Museum of Modern Art. Recently, she founded her own art advisory and curatorial firm, Camara. To Graciela's right is Brian Frasca. Brian is a fine art insurance broker at the Rampart Group in New York. He has over 12 years of industry experience and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English with a minor in art history from Union College. Brian regularly speaks on panels regarding various art issues. He works with many of the world's top collectors, artists, artist estates, foundations, galleries, and museums, and assists them in managing the risks associated with maintaining and protecting art collections. He is involved with a number of charities, including Art 21 and Fundación Jumex.
Fundación Jumex.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start off with Gloria. Gloria, what are the most common mistakes in vis-a-vis a collection you see from a conservation perspective?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. One of I would mention perhaps three of the most common mistakes that happened, and one of them is improper shipping, packing, and handling. They all go together. The next one will be inappropriate display of artworks where the environment can affect them dramatically, and the collector, the institution, most likely will be a collector, including an artist, will display the artwork either too close to the window or near an air conditioning vent or outdoors when it's not meant to be outdoors. And I guess last but not least is that measuring, not getting accurate information on the measurement of the painting, and when it's getting into the premises, it's larger than anticipated, and sometimes damages happen.
So, Gloria, from a conservation perspective, what do you see happening if somebody has stored or displayed art incorrectly? What do you do?
Well, there are many examples of that occurring, and like one of the storage common problems is not having the right relative humidity and the right temperature. Environmental conditions are crucial to maintain. Normally, we would used to say extend the longevity of an object or of an artistic composition, but lately we as conservators use better the quote, minimize the rate of deterioration, because everything at the end, nothing lasts forever, and everything requires maintenance. So storage is incredibly important. Maintenance is incredibly important as well. And I think I answered your question?
Absolutely. Brian, can you comment? What would you advise a client if they had art that they improperly stored or they improperly displayed? What would you advise them from a risk management perspective?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off and talk about when a collector brings a new piece of art into their home. There's a number of various types of risks that you have to look at when art comes into a home. And the reason I'm talking about art coming into a home because we're talking about private collectors here that are buying and purchasing artwork. In Mexico, collectors are growing and new collectors are emerging everywhere. So you really have to know what you're looking at when you're bringing a piece of art into your home. I have had examples where we've had pieces, like Gloria said, that were under air conditioning vents. The collector didn't notice. Mold starts to form. In some cases, that's not covered by insurance carriers. So that's something that, with some insurance carriers, you wouldn't have coverage for. You have to also look at, like Gloria said, how light may affect an artwork. You know, I've had clients where I show up to a house and they have a picture window and they have a pillow stuffed in the picture window to stop light from coming into the house. Well, light is still getting in, and if you take the pillow out of the window, it's completely deteriorated. The most common art loss is from water damage. Whether it's humidity or a pipe bursting in your home or an overflow of a toilet, this can often cause serious damage for the work that would be below. So when we come into a home, we take a lot of these factors into consideration.
Now, do you make recommendations once you've done a study?
Exactly. So we'll go into a person's home and we'll look at, we'll look at where the art is located and what type of water sources may be near or behind the art. So you look and you have a bathroom right above a piece of art. So we can suggest for the client to add certain types of devices into their homes, which will better protect the art from water damage. So there's one device that's called a water cop. And this is a device that has sensors that are placed in water areas, whether it's a washroom or a toilet. So if water damage occurs, this sensor will set off an alarm to alert you that water damage is occurring.
Okay, Brian, so the water cup concept is very interesting. I've got a client, and what is your thoughts on this, who's got in the master bath a number of high-end watercolors?
That is not advisable. Works on paper are the last thing you want to keep in a bathroom. When you're taking showers, you don't have how oftentimes you'll see an Andy Warhol work on paper in a bathroom because it looks really pretty, but you'll see that the work is starting to get creases and lines in it, and it's all as a result of people constantly taking showers and the humidity being 100% in that room oftentimes.
Graciela, from a curatorial perspective, what would you recommend?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this panel. Well, what I'm trying to do since I start making some advice about for new collectors especially is to explain them which could be the process to think about acquiring an artwork. And one of these is to create a lot of information and to keep a kind of sensitivity on the collector about which conditions the collection could need, especially in terms of display. For example, with a curatorial background and working for museums, all the time we try to think when we are working in a museum. So how to frame, how to protect from light, where to hang, if the wall is enough for a certain kind of weight of a piece. I mean, all these kind of things that probably the audience can see as an obvious thing in an exhibition. And for example, when you're attending an exhibition at the gallery, I also try to, how can I say, I can manage two different directions for a collection. The first one related to the content and the concept, but the other one to the conditions that the own collector have to display or to keep or to storage the works. It depends also in the size of the collection. So I think that the topic for the panel is more close to the idea of display, and I think that first of all is how to maintain and to warn the material, I mean all the conditions around the piece. And for example, we were talking before about how to talk to you during the panel, and there are certain kind of elemental situations that it's important to let know to a new collector. For example, like to have a pair of gloves in your home, especially if you have paper, or I don't know, or the things that Brian was saying about the space that is close to a bathroom or a possible source of water is important to keep on mind. So that's like the elemental or the basic principles to acquire a work.
So we're going to skip forward a little bit. Gloria, can you discuss some important issues to consider when a client is purchasing a piece of art?
Thank you. From the conservation standpoint, some of the most important things that we as conservators advise a collector, including an artist, is what are the materials made out of and what to expect on the behavior of these materials, short-term, long-term, and understand that our works are commonly handmade, some of them are industrially made. Everything has a life, but everything requires maintenance, as I said before. So first of all, understanding what the artistic composition is made out of and what to expect of it. The next thing will be requesting condition reports that are independent from the seller. Whether they come from a reputable conservator or not, is always, sometimes the condition reports are not updated. So to get a condition report that is updated, up to date, and have the best examination possible to understand what the condition of this artwork is before acquisition.
Now, what points do you request those reports? Are there 1 point, or is it 2 points?
What do you mean by that?
When if you're going to buy, if you're working with a client who's purchasing a piece, do you request a condition report before they purchase it, after they purchase it, before
commonly
shipment?
before acquisition, you will demand the condition report. And again, there are works that are high value or medium value that will have mild conditions, and it's up to the collector that they're okay. Everything ages, as I said, so you cannot expect to have a Rothko in perfect condition that is like 30, 40 years old. And on that note, it is very important to know that is this Rothko in good and stable condition, even though it has craquelure, it has aged, it has wear and tear, the canvas is in fair condition for the collector to decide, yes, I'm going to acquire this work. With a newer composition of a younger artist, or a newer, or even an older artist in age, but has produced something recently, to understand that artwork, even though it's new, is still present a good condition. Let's say, as Brian was saying, water damage. What if this painting suffered mildew damage at the studio during transit? Things happen, and no one knows what happens until a conservator examines it.
So from a condition report perspective, you ask for one prior to purchase, and then is there any other time that you would ask for one?
Upon purchase, lending is incredibly important. Before you lend a work, when the work arrives to the lender, you get a condition report before it leaves the lender, and when it comes back to you, you want condition reports and accurate documentation to make sure the work left in the same way that it came back.
Brian, do you have a comment?
With regards to condition reports for art collectors, it also gives you bargaining power. If you get a condition report and say the artwork is selling for $500,000 and you find that there's adverse conditions in the artwork, you could potentially get a discount. So a lot of people say, why am I going to pay $1,000 for a condition report before I'm going to buy something? Well, that $1,000 could turn into a big savings for you, and at the same time, you know what you're getting. And I think a lot of times in everything we buy, oftentimes we don't know what we're getting.
Graciela, can you discuss, well, actually, do you have a comment?
Yes, I have a comment regarding the thing you said about how many condition reports you have to ask. I think that it could be important, and it's close to Gloria was saying, to establish the difference for the audience between maintenance situation and conservation situation. And I think that it's close related to the, let's say, kind of program to take care of certain kind of work. And it depends on, you need periodically probably to have a condition report, and because you know before you're buying the work how to keep it safe.
I think oftentimes what I see in my business, I'm oftentimes dealing with collectors that are lending artworks out, and if you look at the condition reports that a collector may actively have in his possession for his collection, it's most likely the last 5 artworks that were lent or the last 7 artworks that were lent. So some artworks that aren't being looked at by a trained conservator are sitting on a wall for 20 years. And there may be things that are occurring to that artwork that, again, we don't know about. And that's why it's important to have someone like Gloria come in and review your artwork. Maybe not condition report everything, but take a look at everything, because she has a trained eye and she can see whether something is going on. Not just Gloria, but any conservator. It's important to use a professional in all aspects of art, whether it's professional shippers and packers, insurance brokers, lawyers. You want to make sure you're dealing with specialists who really understand the intricate natures of the art world.
So, Graciela, I'm going to jump back. Can you give us some tips for someone who's new to building a collection, who's just starting out, irrespective of what price point they're starting? Can you give some tips on that?
About price? Or
about actually building the collection. Like, is somebody starting to if you were going to say to if Brian came to you and said, I want to start collecting, what tips would you give him?
Well, first of all, as I said before, like to create a conscience about the collection itself. And I try all the time to talk to the people just to find out, first of all, why they want to build a collection. And I think that a collection has to create a system, an order, a vision exactly, how you see your collection in the future. And I think that one key word is kind of legacy, because the collection will have a longer life probably than the owner. So how you want to project your own collection. In my case, I don't mind if it's a small or a larger collection, if they want to keep as a private collection or they want to put in a public situation like exhibitions, to create relationships with institutions. But all the time I think that you have to start with this principle.
Okay.
With a vision of the future of the
A
collection.
vision of how the collection's going to grow, not
Exactly.
just, I like that chair, I like that speaker, I like that TV.
I all the time try to create a kind of guideline of the collection, even if it's just because of a formal empathy with the work, or even it's because there's a concept or a context specific behind the collection.
Gloria, do you have any comments on this topic?
Absolutely. I work with younger collectors as well as very large, important corporate and private collections. And beginning with those who are younger or even older couples that decide, hey, like it's a time, we're in our 40s, 50s, and like me, I began my collection probably a decade ago. I wasn't that young back then. And what I did with my collection is what I advise the younger collectors to look into, which is the materials that you're acquiring. Are you going to be happy with something that is ephemeral? Ephemeral means something that can have a life of its own and not last too long, something made out of cardboard and scotch tape and chewing gum, and that happens all the time. And oftentimes the artists that create these compositions, they're not conservators. They want to explore and create compositions that with materials that are unorthodox, and they're not responsible for the behavior. You have to respect conceptual art. We as conservators, it's a very difficult job to try to minimize the rate of deterioration of these materials. So we want to make sure that the collectors understand the materials that they're getting into, and take a look at the conditions before they acquire anything that is low value or high value.
And I think Gloria has an excellent point. I've got a client who's got a very large piece that's made, it's got canvas, and then it's made of glue and seeds. And so if you brush up against the piece, the seeds come off, and the seeds are intricate into what the image is. Graciela?
Well, I want to add something, and I think that Brian said before that also it's important to explain to the collector that there's a huge professional field working around collections. Like the conservation, the movement, shipping, packing, all the time trying to create this kind of conscience. Also, for example, for framing, it's very important to know that you are going to a place that really know the behavior of the materials and how to protect the art piece.
Brian, do you have a comment?
One thing, when you buy an artwork, oftentimes you're not aware of what's coming with it in terms of maintenance and protocols. Some artworks can cost an extreme amount of money to take care of on an annual basis. For example, I know this is a very large-scale work, but the Jeff Koons puppy, which is in front of the Guggenheim in Bilbao, Spain, and there's another one, I believe, in Greenwich, Connecticut. This artwork costs $75,000 a year to maintain, to replant the flowers every year. This is quite a process. So when you buy an artwork, you have to make sure you're checking with the maintenance protocols. How much is it going to cost you to have Gloria come by, if it's necessary, every year? In some cases, we have her resurface some artworks that are outdoor sculptures every 6 months, and it can be, and even more often than that, depending on where they're located.
I've got a client who's into visual art, so we've got an installation that is with plasma TVs. Well, you can't buy plasma TVs anymore, I don't think. I think the really key value, my understanding is, in that installation is the DVD, which you can get the artist a copy, but really, there's a little certificate that we have in a safe deposit box, and that's a certificate from the artist. And so the DVD and the certificate are really the value, not the TVs and the DVD player.
Another example of an artist like that, there's several. Soloit, Richard Woods. These are artists that they make art that you can move. So you have a Soloit drawing on your wall, someone brushes up against it and smears the whole entire thing. Another artwork that would be damage that you would be able to put an insurance claim in for. But that's not the case with Soloit and Richard Woods. We insure the certificate itself, and the artwork is meant to be remade.
Gloria, do you want to talk about that further?
Yes, I personally work with many artists, and before we get into conservation or understanding what to do, what not to do, and decide protocols for conservation, my practice and the practice of most common reputable conservators is to approach the foundation if the artist doesn't live around, it's not around anymore, it's not a living artist, or approach the gallery or the artist studio directly. A lot of artists are very shy and they're very private, and it's a struggle sometimes to go through them to make sure that the protocol that we are presenting to the client is a protocol that abide by the guidelines of their production process. In the case of Lynn Chadwick, the sculptures, the patinas are magnificent. I consider myself amazing doing patinas. She does not allow anyone to create the patinas if a patina gets damaged. I have done protocols under her guidance, but she prefers that the artworks go directly to London and they're executed there. In other cases, I work with the studio of Jeff Koons, Maurizio Cattelan, and they direct me step by step. I meet with the fabricators, and we make sure that the protocols of conservation go in accordance to their guidelines, but performed by us, and the work continues having the same importance and the same quality of completion even after conservation treatments.
And we've worked with some of my clients have worked with foundations, and what we thought we were having something restored, we sent it back to the foundation, and the foundation came back and said this is a counterfeit, and they destroyed the piece. So
I have an interesting, just with the counterfeit, I had an insurance claim maybe about 10 years ago on a piece of porcelain. It was insured with Fireman's Fund at the time for about $60,000, agreed on the policy. The piece was smashed at a party, and Fireman's Fund paid the $60,000. They took the fragments and they brought it to somebody who told them it was a fake. And they did not have anything to go back against the person for, because the person had legitimately bought it for $60,000. They had an invoice, and but it was a fake artwork.
Graciela, can you just discuss some mistakes you've seen when a client has acquired a new piece of art? Have you seen some things not to do?
Well, I think that the most common mistake is related to materials. We were talking also before. Now I have a situation with a piece of art from a very young artist, which is made with plaster. It's a sculptor with plaster. And it was bought like 8 years ago, but neither the artist or the gallery had, and I'm going to back to this point because it is important, gave a kind of document explaining the behavior of the material. So the collector in that moment was just starting with the idea of collecting art, didn't take care also of the space where to display this piece. And ages later, the piece has to be completely
Restored?
restored by a specific person that is working for principal museums, government museums from Centropam, which is the institution in Mexico, working with the plaster, because it has to be a very, very delicate process. And when I was facing this problem, I realized that one important thing also is something that I try to communicate to the collectors, is that the gallery or the artist, it depends where you're acquiring the work, have to provide this kind of information. Sometimes it's real, and it's also from a curatorial experience, that the artist probably doesn't know the behavior of the material or how it's going to last something. But you are trying to feel that you have a bag, you have a structure in your bag to help you if you have any situation. And also, beside the condition report, for example, it's important to ask for instructions for mounting or instructions for determining a space or condition. I think it's also something important.
Yeah, on that note, and to the defense of the artists are not conservators, and they're experimental minds, and they create something, and sometimes they don't even have a clue that Scotch tape is not going to last more than 2 years, or the chewing gum is going to drip in the sugars, and I can put examples out there of, without mentioning artists specifically, because we obviously have to have the most respect for them and respect their conceptualism, for a lack of better words. And the gallery sometimes does not know either much about conservation, so that's when we come into play. Even working with artists, a lot of them, they call me, Gloria, I'm using this, what do you think? I'm like, there is no way that's going to last. And we present protocols for our artists to execute the same concept with a material that has better longevity. But not all artists will know what to expect of their compositions, not even traditional painters that are using plaster. Like I have the example of a very famous contemporary artist. The paintings are beginning to produce severe craquelure, but it's craquelure that is stable. All the collectors are freaking out, and I spoke with the artist, and the artist is like, I just did that because I thought it was cool to do that. And what I say to them, well, you look at the Mona Lisa has cracks too. So everything ages, and everything is going to come to deteriorate at some point. And on a funny note, I tell the collectors as well, you maintain your home, you maintain your Maserati and your Lamborghini and your McLaren and your boat. You need to provide the proper maintenance for your collection and your objects.
That I know of who did some works that would melt. Do you ever get, from an insurance side, from an insurance perspective, do the insurance companies ever deny coverage because the material is just too tenuous?
Well, there's certainly there's something in an insurance policy, an exclusion insurance policy called inherent vice. which is basically wear and tear. So something that's going to happen anyway as a result of the way that the artist created the work is not going to be covered by insurance. So this example of the craquelure that Gloria gave, that wouldn't be covered because that's a natural process that's going to happen no matter what. I have had experiences, and I think it's very interesting, when you're talking about dealing on an art loss with a living artist versus one that has passed. It's a constant struggle. Some artists want to fix the works themselves, but they are not conservators, and they don't make their money fixing artwork, they make their money making artworks. So oftentimes they will use practices that someone like Gloria wouldn't think of using, and then they just simply say, it's mine, it's okay. And they have the ability to do that. And I had a claims representative from an insurance company years back say to me, dealing with a living artist on a claim is like giving a gun to an assassin.
So Brian, and I'll note here, every question that Brian wrote that I have to ask him includes please. So Brian, can you please discuss some important issues after an artwork is acquired? He didn't do that for anybody else.
Well, yeah, thank you, Vaughn. I appreciate that. I think the first thing, and obviously I might be jaded by saying this after you buy an artwork, is to call your insurance broker, which I understand not all that many people, or there's not everyone in Mexico has for their art insurance. I think insurance has a bit of a misconception that we're just trying to take your money. A lot of people feel that way, and there's really nothing that we can do to help you. When in all actuality, when you pay your insurance premiums to the insurance company, they really, really don't want you to have a claim. The last thing they want is for you to have a claim. So they actually will staff people to help you to better protect your art collection. There's actually someone right here, Lucia Debra Alvarez from AXA Seguros, and she's one of those people that works with AXA, and you can call her in and ask her questions. How do I better protect my artwork? She'll call in professionals if necessary. And you have someone basically on staff for you after you pay your insurance premium that we're free. We've already collected our commission. We can't charge you anymore. Whereas Vaughn, as a lawyer,
I can charge you a lot.
He's charging you by the hour. We're actually getting charged for him being here right now.
Right.
I'm just joking.
No, but I'll say something on the insurance broker versus the insurance company perspective. What I've seen with clients is the insurance company really doesn't want to pay you, right? They've got your premium. They don't want to pay out. Your insurance broker, like Brian said, has already been paid their commission, and they're going to go to bat for you and actually work towards getting you paid because you're their client. And I don't think the insurance companies necessarily, they view you as a client. I don't know about their client. Whereas a good broker will go to bat and will really try to get payouts out of an insurer.
No, just to go back to the original question of what to do after you acquire an artwork. So yes, first call your insurance broker. Second, just a quick note. When you actually pay for the artwork, that is the point when you're responsible for the artwork and you own it. So if you pay for it and it's being shipped out of the gallery, you're responsible for the piece once it's shipped out of the gallery, not the gallery. So that's something, call your broker, make sure it's insured. Next, you want to make sure that you have the proper protocol for the artwork going forward in terms of maintenance. We could go into risk management. I could talk about risk management at home for a whole nother hour, but...
Okay, but we got a better question. For Gloria and Graciela, who is a better custodian of art, a private collector or a museum?
Go ahead.
Well, that's a hard question. I think that a private collection and a museum has a different commitment in terms of the collection itself. So both has different processes and different systems to create the protection of the collection. And I don't feel secure to say which one is the better. But I think that both has to follow their own protocols and call to the correct person when it's necessary.
I'll jump in.
Is insurance if it is. It's a completely. Wait a second.
Wait, this was Gloria and Graciela's question.
She didn't want to say something else.
You didn't write please.
For example, it's a completely different process if you need to call an insurance broker during an exhibition or with your collection. I mean, it's a completely different, for example, condition report, or I forgot the word, the condition report of the space of a museum, or the space of a private, the facility report, exactly. So I think that are two different scenarios for this question.
Well, my point on that is either or neither. Some museums have the budget to have amazing environmental conditions, and the budget can be limitless, the same as foundations. Some other museums don't have the budget and the environmental conditions, and we can see it in Mexico with different institutions, in Colombia, even in the United States, and these organizations struggle to get money simply for the better climate controls, only for that part, better climate controls in their environment. Collections, same thing. Some collectors have a limitless amount of money to provide climate controls, museum quality in their collections. I have a client that has most of their collections in 2 yachts that travel all over the world. We're talking de Koonings, Picassos, Ed Rusches, Dubuffets, you name it. And they have obviously amazing insurance, but aside from that, they have like 0 pressure cabins in their yachts. And I've never seen such a quality environmental condition in a yacht for a collection better than some other homes. And so those who cannot afford to have environmental conditions in their home because the budget is an issue, they will have the consequences of getting works damaged earlier than later.
Funnily enough, last night we were at a get-together for some very prominent collectors, and I almost knocked over a sculpture because they were living with the art. And so I think that there are environmental considerations, like even where you're placing the art, because they had so much stuff in a very compact space, and so there can be things like that.
It was bad because I was the insurance broker and I brought him to the party, so it would have been very bad.
So I think importantly, and I know this is a boring topic, but I've seen it with my clients, and I think it's important for every collector. Brian, can you explain the different types of valuations and what they mean?
Sure, absolutely. With insurance and buying a piece of art, you really have to know the difference between the types of valuation on a policy. And it also just whether it will apply for taxes in the U.S. and you have fair market value, which in the easiest terms is the hammer price at auction. It's what a willing buyer and seller will come up with in a sale. For example, Larry Gagosian or an art dealer may buy an artwork at auction for, say, $1 million. He then takes it back to his studio, stores it for a month or two, and puts a $1.5 million price tag on it. Now, that artwork, if you were to have a fair market value insurance valuation on your policy, you're only getting $1 million, but you bought it for $1.5 million. There's a different value that the insurance community is starting to take on, but the appraisal community has definitions for, and that's retail replacement value. And retail replacement value essentially is that value that you would be getting from the dealer, or what it would cost you to go out and replace that artwork. So if there aren't any dealers approaching private collectors to try and convince them to sell their artworks to you. So obviously it's a much more of an inflated value with retail replacement costs or insurance value and fair market value.
And my clients tend to like retail replacement because essentially the value that the appraiser puts on the piece, if it were destroyed tomorrow and they had to go into the marketplace and replace it tomorrow.
I'd also like to note that the higher the value of the artwork, the closer together the retail replacement value and fair market value come into play.
So Gloria, can you just tell us some interesting fact or story of what you've seen, like one of the craziest things you've seen in the art world that's going to be entertaining?
I guess there is never a dull moment in the world of conservation, and I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I guess you're asking about the ugly, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, one of the things that actually we're presently dealing with from the conservation standpoint with different conservation laboratories in Europe and in the US is a public work that I can talk about is the inverted screw by Claes Oldenburg. This artwork was produced in the 70s and is made out of rubber, kind of like the rubber that is used for tires, and it's a large screw. It stands up and it kind of moves and is very organic, for a lack of a better word. Suddenly, collectors began to complain that the artwork is dripping after almost 40 years. And I got to assess one. One of my colleagues in Germany has another one. I got to Palm Beach to assess. The edition was 25 of them. I called the fabricator through the gallery, and he says, I have a piece here in the desert, and the piece is intact. It's an artist proof. And 2 years later, he calls me. He says, my piece is breaking down. The material, there is no way to bring it back. We tried from liquid nitrogen. We tried freezing the artwork with, like, in a refrigerator, so to speak, in a industrial freezer. We tried different chemical procedures to try to see what can be reversed, and it's definitely irreversible. So in that case, it's a tragedy. The collectors purchased these artworks for more or less $15,000 back in the time, maybe less. Today, that artwork would be probably $250,000. And what we're trying to do is to get the gallery and the gallery and the fabricator to reproduce the works, destroy those that are breaking down. We haven't been able to track down all of the 25 edition, and 7 of them only we were able to track down. We have the suspicion that some people threw them away because they didn't pay much money for them. And the idea is to replace them for new, replace them to the collector, destroy the old ones, and the artwork will have the same value with much better material. However, now there is, and then the only thing is the collectors who want to pay the cost for reproduction, which is not that much. So it's something that is out there we're dealing with, and I think it's really sad that we have a piece that after 30 years, no one expected it was going to fall apart because it stayed perfect, and that's what we deal with, materials that were researched very well, and somehow, some way, the chemical composition went wrong, and decades later, they broke apart.
Brian, do you have any good horror stories?
Yeah, I have many.
Just one.
I have this. This one is an interesting one. It's a collector, a client of mine, bought a piece about 10 years ago, and it was a very large-scale installation. Probably could have filled this room that we're in twice. And after he purchased the artwork, he realized that he really didn't have anywhere to put it, which is a discussion that we had earlier. Where am I going to put this thing? It's going to cost me a fortune to store, and thousands and thousands of dollars a year just to store it. So the gallerist said, well, I'll store it for you. Pay me $6,000 a year. Okay. So several years later, the collector says, I just bought a new house. I have space for this artwork. I would like to install it. Now, the gallerist had taken the artwork and placed it on a farm in Connecticut in a storage container next to a pile of wood. Now, the storage container did not have any conditions of museum quality conditions or anything. It was just simply left to the elements for 6 years. So when they opened it up, it was a true horror story. Bugs, insects, mold, you name it. And water damage from water leaking into this thing. And it was a real problem from an insurance standpoint because we had a combination of loss factors, some of which are covered, some of which are not. So it made for an extremely complex insurance claim. And in the end, the gallery ended up paying the portion that the insurance company didn't.
So I'll give you one quick takeaway. If you're going to buy art, do not leave it at the gallery. We're going
That's
to,
a great point. Yes, that's.
just don't do it. I had a client who bought art years ago, left it at the gallery in Italy. She called me up and she said, I want to get the piece back. I said, how long has it been in the gallery? 8 years. Okay, well, just know that if you leave it at the gallery, it's still essentially an asset of the gallery. So if they go bankrupt, you're not going to get it back. So I said, what do you want me to do? She goes, I want you to call the dealer and get it back. So I called a customs guy that I know in D.C., and I said, we need to get this back. What can we do? He calls his buddy in Italy. And we find out that the gallery has shut down, and they've reopened under another name with not the same owners. And it's essentially smuggling if they ship the piece out of Italy. And so we ended up ultimately being able to get it through France. It cost the client €5,000. We got it back to the U.S., but don't buy stuff and leave it with the gallery. I don't care how good of friends you are. Does anybody have any questions? We still have about 10 minutes for Q&A. Do you want any more horror stories? We'll give Graciela one last story.
I'm sorry I arrived late, but I think something important is to let the collectors know that they need documents, certificates, invoices, and all the documentation, because if not, the insurance will not cover anything.
Provenance.
Exactly, and well, you asked for a story, and I have one, because the loss of documents, and that's a big problem. I have to say that part of my job is, for example, if there is a collection and the collector said, okay, I want you to advise, the first thing that I have to do is to ask for a condition report to check if there is any emergency to take care of, and also to have the complete registration of the piece, of the documents, of the provenance, of the year of acquisition, and in terms of value, which value is in the present. I mean, a complete history of the piece, and also, very important, the location, because there's a lot of collectors that probably have different locations for the works, and they don't know where is the certain kind of piece. So I think it's related to what Lucia just commented, and very important, the documents.
All right, well, thank you for your time. We're happy that you're here, and have a good afternoon.